My wife left me while I was recovering from a car crash. You're just dead weight now, she whispered. Months later, at my company's award gala, she waited in line for my autograph. Hours later, the crowd froze as my billion-dollar team toasted to the mistake that made me. I'm Milo. I'm 43. I live in Boston, and I co-founded a tech company that took off last year in a way I still can't believe. But before any of that happened, my life fell apart in the most BR-tao, personal way imaginable. It started with a car crash. It was late September, one of those cold, rainy nights where the roads feel greasy. I was working late. We had a product launch coming up, and I had this last-minute idea for optimizing one of our AI modules. Honestly, I should have just left it for the morning, but I couldn't sleep. I'm the type who obsessively fixates on things. So, I got in my car, drove into the office. I remember the lights of the oncoming truck, then metal crunching. Then nothing. I woke up 3 days later in the ICU at Massachusetts General. My pelvis was shattered. 3 ribs broken. My right arm was in a cast, and there was nerve damage down my left leg. I couldn't move. Couldn't even lift myself to pee. I was helpless. But Lara was there. She was holding my hand when I woke up, wiping my forehead, whispering that I was strong, that I'd get through it. And I believed her. We'd been married for 7 years. No kids. We were always planning to try, but we had a nice life. Not perfect. We'd hit some rough patches, especially last year. She said I was too obsessed with work. I thought she was too flaky with her photography gigs. But at the core, we still laughed. Still had inside jokes. Still held each other at night. I really believed we'd make it. The first week in the hospital, she came every day. Brought books. Played music. Talked about mundane stuff, just to distract me. But by the 3rd week, she started coming later. Leaving earlier. Taking calls in the hallway, and coming back with that guilty look people get when they've been talking about you. Sorry, just a client, she'd say. They're asking me to fly out for a shoot. Just a few days. By week 5, she stopped showing up altogether. I'd text. Sometimes she'd reply. Most times she wouldn't. When she did answer, it was short. Busy today, sorry. Shoot running late. Hope physio went okay. Then, one rainy Wednesday afternoon, she walked in with makeup on and a thin envelope in her hand. She looked different. Like she was going to a job interview or a party, not a hospital. Hey, she said, almost too cheerfully. I smiled, stupidly relieved. You came. She sat on the edge of the bed. Didn't touch me. Didn't kiss my cheek like usual. Just sat there. Milo, I've been thinking a lot. About everything. My stomach dropped. I didn't sign up for this, she said quietly. I blinked. What? This version of life. Hospitals. Bedpans. Months of rehab. I can't do it. I thought I could. But I can't. Lara, you're not the same, she said, eyes wet. You're just dead weight now. I didn't even understand what she was saying at first. My brain wouldn't compute it. She dropped the envelope on the tray next to my uneaten pudding. I'm sorry, but I need to live. I need my life back. Then she left. Just like that. No fight. No goodbye kiss. Just the smell of her perfume lingering in the air while I stared at the divorce papers. I didn't cry right away. I couldn't. My body was too broken. But later that night, when the nurse turned out the lights and the beeping machines were the only sound in the room, I wept. Quiet, ugly sobs. The kind that make your ribs ache. And the worst part? I believed her. I believed I was dead weight. The next few months were the lowest of my life. I didn't eat much. Didn't talk much. My physical therapist kept pushing, but I could barely find the will to try. Until Alan started showing up. Alan Vero, my co-founder. Grumpy as hell, blunt to the point of rudeness. We met in grad school, built Kelentech from a shared apartment in Somerville. He's not the sentimental type, but he came. With his laptop. With printouts. With schematics. With food. You still have a brain, Milo. So we're going to use it. He brought the team in once a week. They'd sit by my bed and talk through code. We built a whole new data infrastructure model while I was in rehab. And slowly, I found a reason to move again. Rehab was BR Tao. Learning to walk again felt like climbing Everest in flip-flops. I fell a lot. I swore more than I've ever sworn in my life. I had to relearn things like how to stand from a chair without using both arms. It was humbling in a way that breaks your ego into pieces. But piece by piece, I started coming back. We launched Obelisk 7 months later. It was messy, it was risky, and it was brilliant. Within 3 months, our client list exploded. Data firms, insurance giants, even government contracts. By the end of the year, we were worth $400 million. 6 months later, we hit a $1 billion valuation. And then came the gala. The Kelentech Gala was surreal. Held at the Fairmont Copley, black tie, open bar, live jazz, the works. I walked in, on my own 2 legs, no cane, and people stood. They clapped. Cameras flashed. A guy from Bloomberg asked for a quote. I just smiled. Then I saw her. Lara. Near the back of the room, holding a glass of rose. Eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. She looked nervous. Like a kid about to confess breaking a window. I turned away. I didn't approach her. I had people to greet, hands to shake. It wasn't until much later, when things had calmed, that I saw her standing in line. For my autograph, we were signing first edition prints of our white paper. Some collector's thing. I couldn't believe it. When it was her turn, she stepped forward. "Hi," she said, voice soft. I looked up. "Hi. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I know that probably doesn't mean much, but..." I took the paper from her hands, signed it, handed it back. She looked at it. Her lips moved as she read what I'd written. "To the one who left too early. Thank you for the freedom." She blinked. Didn't speak. Just stepped aside. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to. After Laura stepped aside, I didn't see her for the rest of the night. Maybe she left. Maybe she stayed in the shadows, watching me work the room. Either way, I didn't go looking. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Vindicated, even. But I didn't. I felt heavy. Not with regret. Not with sadness, exactly. Just this strange weight of everything that had happened. The distance between the man lying in a hospital bed, begging someone not to leave, and the man now being toasted by executives in tuxedos. It was dizzying. "Come on," Alan said, clapping me on the back. "They're lining up for a toast." I followed him to the front. Our core team stood around, glasses in hand, all of us blinking like we were still trying to believe it was real. Cameras flashed. There was laughter. Someone made a joke about the early days when our office chairs didn't match. Then Alan, always allergic to sentiment, raised his glass. "To mistakes," he said with a smirk. People chuckled. "To the screw-ups that cost us time. The early demos that crashed. The clients that ghosted us. The near burnouts." Then his voice shifted, a little softer. "And to the personal disasters that somehow led us here." A quiet fell over the room. He turned and looked at me. "To the people who left us behind," he said. "And the ones who stayed. And to the man who rebuilt everything when he had nothing." I didn't speak. Just raised my glass. My throat was too tight to say anything anyway. After the gala, I got back to my apartment, a loft I'd bought downtown after we hit Series C funding, and just sat in the silence. Took off the tux, poured a scotch, stared at the skyline. My phone buzzed. "Laura, can we talk?" I stared at it for a while. The petty part of me wanted to ignore it, but I'm not good at pretending things don't bother me. So I replied, "Me now." She didn't answer, but 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. She was still in the same dress. Makeup a little faded. She held her clutch like it weighed 50 pounds. "I'm not here to beg," she said, walking in before I even said anything. "Or to apologize again. I know I said things I can't take back. But I saw you tonight, and I realized, I don't even know who you are anymore." I took a sip of my drink and leaned against the counter. "That makes two of us." She laughed a little, but it wasn't funny. "I've been watching all the press," she said. "For months. The articles. The interviews. Your TED Talk. You could have just called." I didn't think I had the right to. I said nothing. She stepped closer. "I left because I was scared. That's the truth. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I didn't know how to be with someone who needed so much." That hit harder than I expected. "So you ran?" "Yes." "Do you know what it's like," I said, setting my glass down, "to be lying in a bed, not able to move, thinking that the one person who's supposed to love you just decided you're disposable?" She looked down. "No, every single day, Laura. I asked myself what I did wrong. If maybe I worked too much. If maybe I didn't listen enough. If maybe I should have said no to late nights and yes to Bali like you wanted." "You're not disposable," she said quickly. "You were never, but that's what it felt like. You know what Alan said to me the first time he visited after you left?" She shook her head. "He said, she was never built for this. And I defended you. I said you just needed time. That you'd come around. That you were overwhelmed." She was crying now. "But he was right. You weren't built for it. And that's not a crime. But you didn't just leave. You made me feel like I deserved it." "I hated myself for that," she whispered. "Every single day? I still do." I didn't know what to say to that. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator. "Finally," she asked, "are you happy now?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I'm better. I'm different. Some days are still hard. I still have nerve pain. Sometimes I wake up and reach for you, and then remember." She closed her eyes like she couldn't bear to hear it. "But I'm surrounded by people who didn't run," I said. "People who showed up. Even when I was angry. Even when I didn't want them to." She nodded, wiped her face. "I didn't come to win you back, Milo. I came because I needed you to know that you weren't the mistake. Leaving you was. That one knocked the air out of me." She stepped back. "I should go." I didn't stop her. Not because I didn't care, but because for the first time since that hospital bed, I didn't feel like I needed anything from her anymore. After she left, I just stood there for a while, still wearing the shirt from the gala, half untucked, top button loose. I didn't move, didn't drink, just stared at the door. I don't know what I expected. Closure? Catharsis? Some kind of release? Instead, I felt hollow, like she'd come and scooped something out of me that I didn't know was still there. My phone buzzed again. I half hoped it was her. Maybe another message. Something more. But it was Alan. "Alan, tomorrow 10 a.m. Demo with Echelon Group. Don't be late. Of course. Back to work. The next morning, I was at the office early. Not because I had to be, but because the idea of being alone in that apartment made my skin itch. Our office in Seaport overlooks the harbor. It's clean, minimalist, everything glass and steel, but we still keep our old whiteboard from the early days, covered in Sharpadoodles and half-erased notes. I stood there for a while, staring at some equation that no longer made sense, like it had been written by a past version of me. Hey, came a voice behind me. Alan. He held out a coffee. Black. No sugar. You look like crap. Didn't sleep, I said. You see her? I nodded. Thought she might show. Yeah. We stood in silence for a second. Then he said, You okay? No, I said honestly. But I'm functioning. So that's something. He didn't say anything back. Just sipped his coffee. Alan's like that. He doesn't do emotional pep talks. But he shows up. He does the work. And in the end, that counts more than words. The demo went well. Better than expected. Echelon was impressed, especially with the predictive data stack we'd built. After the meeting, a few of the newer team members went out to lunch to celebrate. I didn't go. I said I had emails to catch up on. Truthfully, I just didn't want to be around anyone. I found myself back in the server room. It's quieter there. Cool. Humming. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and just exhaled. That's when Margot walked in. Margot's our head of product. Mid-30s. Brilliant. Blunt. Used to run systems for a fintech firm in NYC before joining us. We'd always had a kind of quiet respect between us. Never flirted. Never crossed lines. But she always read me a little too well. Figured I'd find you here, she said, sitting across from me without asking. Place to think. Also place to hide. I shrugged. She studied me. You okay? Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because you're obviously not. I didn't argue. She came last night, I said. Margot tilted her head slightly. Your ex? Yeah. And? She said she didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she couldn't handle it. Margot didn't flinch. That sounds true. I looked at her. You don't think that's cowardly? I think most people are cowards, Milo. Doesn't mean they're evil. Just limited. I let that sit for a moment. Then, I spent so long trying to become someone she'd regret leaving. And now that I am, it's just quiet. It's not revenge. It's not victory. It's just me. Still trying to feel okay. You're not supposed to feel okay, she said. You're supposed to feel real. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Sometimes I think, I said slowly, if the crash hadn't happened, if I hadn't been broken, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe I wouldn't have lost everything. You didn't lose everything, she said. I laughed bitterly. Sure feels like it some days. You built a company from a rehab bed. You walk on your own. You didn't disappear. I changed, I said. She nodded. We all did. For a long while, we just sat there. Two people surrounded by machines, grief, and a whole lot of things unsaid. Finally, she said, come to the strategy retreat next weekend. You've been skipping the offsites. The team needs to see you. Not just your Slack messages. I'm not sure I'm up for campfires and team bonding right now. Then don't do it for them. Do it for yourself. That night, I sat on my balcony, overlooking the city, wrapped in a fleece blanket, laptop on my knees. I didn't code. I didn't check financials. I opened a blank document and just started typing. Not a business plan. Not a press release. Just thoughts. Fragments. Things I remembered from the hospital. Things Lara said. Things I wanted to say, but never did. I wrote for 2 hours without stopping. At some point, I realized I was crying. Silent tears, falling onto the keyboard. I didn't wipe them away. They weren't sad tears, not really. They were the kind of tears that come when a wound finally scabs over, and you realize it doesn't hurt the same way it used to. The next few days passed in a strange haze. I wasn't numb exactly, just flat. Like the adrenaline from the gala had burned through whatever reserves I'd been running on, and now I was coasting on fumes. People in the office kept congratulating me. Some even jokingly asked if I'd gotten an agent yet after that quote Alan dropped about the mistake that made me. It was already circulating on LinkedIn posts and startup blogs. I saw one with my face superimposed on a mountain, like some motivational meme. I didn't even have the energy to cringe. On Thursday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. Then another. Finally, out of curiosity, I answered the fourth one. Milo Parent? Yeah, who's this? This is Anthony Ruiz, producer for Tech Talk Live. We'd love to have you on for a segment. Half-hour sit-down. Thoughtful stuff. Nothing sensational. We're fascinated by your comeback. I sighed. Not really doing interviews right now. There was a pause. Understood. But, if you change your mind, we're doing a series on entrepreneurial resilience. You're basically the poster child. I laughed, not kindly. You mean because I got hit by a truck and didn't die? Well, that, and because your ex-wife left you while you were in recovery, and now you're a billionaire. It's a compelling story. I hung up. I must have sat there with the phone in my hand for 10 full minutes before tossing it on the couch and pacing the room. I hated how my story was being packaged, reduced, branded. To them, it was an arc, a headline. Man loses everything, builds empire. But to me, it was just my life. Every day still hurt in some small way. And no amount of press coverage was going to change that. That weekend, I actually did go to the strategy retreat. Margot had been right. The team needed to see me. But more than that, I think I needed to see them. We held it up in New Hampshire, near Lake Winnipesaukee, at this rustic but surprisingly tech-enabled lodge someone on our ops team found on Airbnb. Full Wi-Fi, heated floors, but also Eskimo race kits and 2 mini deer. The first night, everyone stayed up too late drinking hard cider and playing Cards Against Humanity. I found myself laughing more than I expected to. The second day, Margot and I went for a walk along the lake. She didn't talk much, just walked beside me, hands in her coat pockets, eyes on the water. Eventually, she said, "You don't have to be the phoenix every day, you know." I looked at her. "What?" She shrugged. "Everyone keeps talking about how you rose from the ashes. But sometimes, you don't need to rise. You just need to be." That stuck with me. We watched ducks land on the lake, the water rippling outward like little shock waves. It reminded me of the way a single choice, like driving into the office that night, can ripple out for years. "Did I ever tell you," I said quietly, "that I thought Laura was going to be the mother of my kids?" Margot looked at me, not pitying, just still. "She used to talk about names," I continued. "Arlo for a boy, Juniper for a girl." She said Juniper sounded like a painter. "She sounds like someone who wanted a story," Margot said after a moment. "She did. And you became one. Just not the one she could stay in." I nodded slowly. Then, almost too softly to hear, she said, "She made room for people who could." I didn't answer that, but something in me unclenched a little. Back at the lodge, I sat down with Joel, our youngest engineer, only 25, and helped him troubleshoot a weird API call that kept spitting out corrupted JSON. We joked around. He made fun of my ancient coding habits. I mock-scolded him about using too many nested loops. At one point, he looked up and said, "You seem lighter." "Lighter?" "Yeah," he shrugged. "I mean, you're still intense as hell, but more human." I grinned. "Don't tell anyone. Ruins the brand." That Monday, I came back to Boston with a new sense of, not peace, exactly, but movement. A slow, creaky wheel inside me was turning again. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was steering. Then I got an email. Subject, from Laura. Not from her personal address. From a new one. I clicked, not knowing what to expect. "Milo, I know I said everything I needed to say that night, but I've been writing this for weeks, trying to get it right. I keep thinking about that day in the hospital. The look in your eyes. You didn't just look hurt. You looked erased. Like I'd taken something vital from you. And I think I did. The thing I regret most isn't leaving. It's not staying long enough to understand the man you were becoming. You were never dead weight. I was just too small to carry anything heavy. I saw your photo in Forbes. And for the first time, I didn't feel pride. I felt shame. Because the man in that photo, I could have stood beside him. But I chose to run instead. I won't reach out again. I just needed to say this once, out loud, where you could hear it. I'm sorry. Truly. Laura, I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat there for a long time. Not angry. Not sad. Just breathing. After I read Lara's email, I didn't write back. Not because I was angry, though I had every right to be, but because I didn't need to. She was right. I had become someone she never stayed long enough to know. And now she had to live with that. What I did next wasn't out of spite. It was something I'd been thinking about long before she walked back into my life. But her message? It gave me the final push. I announced a new initiative through Kelentech, a mentorship accelerator program specifically for early-stage founders who were recovering from major life events. Illness, injury, loss, trauma. I called it Second Start. The press went nuts. Not just because of the money we poured into it, though the $25 million endowment definitely turned heads, but because of the story behind it. Every outlet that had once asked for an interview now begged to cover the launch. I finally agreed to one. It was a sit-down with a Boston Globe columnist who didn't ask the usual startup founder questions. She asked about the hospital, about the nights alone, about what it felt like to have the person I loved walk away. I didn't say her name, but everyone knew. I used to think success would fill the hole, I told the interviewer. Turns out, it just draws a bigger circle around it. The article went viral. Thousands of messages poured in, from people who'd been left in wheelchairs, from women recovering from cancer whose partners abandoned them, from veterans, from survivors, from people like me, people who'd been written off. Dead weight. 3 months later, I got a request to speak at the National Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference in New York. I almost said no, but then I saw the list of panel moderators. Laura. She wasn't listed as Laura Perrin anymore. She'd gone back to her maiden name, Laura Hadley. It hit me strange at first, like seeing a childhood street renamed. I accepted. I didn't tell anyone on my team why I was really going. When I arrived at the conference, it was everything I expected: buzzing halls, booths full of bleeding-edge tech, and more people saying disruption than should be legally allowed in a 24-hour period. I sat through 2 panels, shook hands with investors, signed some books. Then came my main event. I stepped on stage in a crisp charcoal suit. No cane. Just me and the spotlight. Laura was seated to my left at the moderator table, flipping through her cards like they might run away from her. She looked up and smiled professionally. "Milo, it's good to see you again." "You too," I said, calm as ever. The panel started off routine. Questions about AI regulation, responsible data use, what it takes to build a strong team. Then she asked, "You've said before that adversity was your greatest teacher. Do you think you'd be here without that hardship?" I looked at her, right at her. "No," I said. "I wouldn't. That hardship shaped everything. It showed me who my friends were, who showed up, who didn't." The room went quiet. You could feel the shift in the air. She swallowed. "And do you think people change?" "Absolutely," I said. "Some evolve, some rot, and some simply reveal who they were all along." A few people in the front row blinked. A guy in the back audibly said, "Damn." Laura didn't flinch. She nodded, shuffled her cards, and moved on. But I knew. She felt it. Not humiliation, just the weight of missed chances, of being so close to something extraordinary and walking away from it with her hands still clean. After the panel, people lined up to talk to me. She lingered near the edge of the stage, watching, maybe waiting. Eventually, she walked over. "That was," she started. "Sharp." I smiled. "Truth usually is." She hesitated. "Are you happy?" I thought about it. "I'm whole," I said. "And that's better." She nodded. "You were always going to be great, you know." I looked at her, not with anger, not even pity, just distance, like looking at a memory through fogged glass. "No," I said. "I became great the moment you left." Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She nodded again, slower this time. Then she said, "Take care of yourself, Milo." "You too, Laura." And with that, she walked away. Not out of a hospital room this time, but out of my life, for good. It's been 2 years since then. Kelantech is now a Fortune 100 company. Second Start has helped over 600 entrepreneurs rebuild their lives. One of them, a single mom from Philly who coded an entire CRM from a dialysis chair, just closed her seed round for $2.4 million. Margot and I, well, that's another story. Slow burning, unexpected, grounded in reality. She's not a whirlwind. She's a compass. And I've learned to trust the kind of woman who stays steady, even when the storm hits. I still walk past Mass General sometimes. I stop. I breathe. And I smile, not because I won, but because I survived. Because the biggest revenge is living a full life after someone swore you couldn't, and never needing them to see it to make it real.